Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. John Corcoran, Right Choice 2023 Slate. I told you that I was going to get back to you and start a series, and so here is first of many that I plan to bring to you. A lot of people are wondering, what exactly is the plan? Why should I vote for you? What are you going to do to make our union the way we want our union to be? Whatever suits you. Everyone has a personal choice that they're going to be making, but that choice needs to be an informed decision. You need to know the facts. You need to know what is at stake here. So first off, what I'm going to tell you is this. The plan that Pete Tanner, myself, Don Sorrentino, Malvika Matharu, Mark South, Bruce Battlein, and Vanessa Rivero all have is that we are going to make up the executive board that will lead the union and organize the union. And that main goal is strictly representation. Well, in order to do that, we have to be willing to, the union has to be willing to listen to what you have to say. And so, therefore, our role is strictly going to be as a role of governance. It's going to be overseeing, making sure that the committees are empowered, and that there's a line of communication to be able to listen to everything that needs to be said. So here's the first one that is the most important, because it's all about the money. Everyone always wants to make sure that they're going to get paid as much and the working conditions are going to be the way they would wish them to be. So one of the biggest committees we have, the most, I would say the most impactful committees we have, is the negotiating committee. Now, there is two documents that the union has to comply with. One is the IBT Constitution, and that governs all of IBT locals. And then each local has a set of bylaws. So liken that to FCOM Volume 1 and FOM. And all of us know that as long as we comply with those documents and we operate the airplanes within accordance of those two documents, we're doing our jobs. So imagine, put it into a flying scenario. You're listening to a pilot flying, given a briefing to go into land wherever, and the person says, I know that Vol 1 says this, and I know the FOM says this, but I have a much better way of doing it. So I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and maintain full speed to 5 miles out. And by the time we get to 200 feet, I'll be fully configured and I'm going to dazzle you with this beautiful landing. There's not a pilot here that would accept that as the plan of how they were going to go in and make this approach. Well, the same goes for running a union. If you don't follow the Constitution and the bylaws, how could you ever expect to get the proper representation that you need? So, going back to the negotiating committee, the Constitution states that the negotiating committee will be made up of rank and file members of that local. It continues to say that because those members are going to be the ones that are under the terms and conditions that are being negotiated. Okay, sounds pretty logical. However, our current negotiating committee is made up of all elected officers, and one chairman, Doug Malcolm, is not an elected officer. So therefore, the committee we have is not following the Constitution. It is an improperly seated negotiating committee. It's not possible for the actual terms and conditions to be properly negotiated if it's not made up of rank and file members. The previous contract, the contract that we're working on right now, a lot of the committee members that I've spoken to complained that the committees weren't referred to when agreeing to the terms. And that's another point. The contract we have It was arbitrated. It was that we were not allowed to ratify it, which means that we were not allowed to be given it to us to review and either vote to accept it or to turn it down and send them back for new terms. However, the 90s, I couldn't tell you exactly how many percentage, but a large portion of the contract was all agreed to, and only a small section was actually given to the arbitrator to make an award. So therefore, shouldn't we have been given the opportunity to give input of what we wanted our contract to say? For example, are we happy about the fact that the Z day got changed to starting at 0700? Are we happy with the fact that now when you've reached 20 years seniority, you don't have an advantage to being able to pick your vacation weeks throughout the year? This news vacation bid has caused a lot of tension with people because essentially seniority does not exist when it comes to bidding for vacation any longer. Another one that's come up, and this has gotten a lot of attention lately, is that there was a 115-hour cap placed onto in our contract. Now, this 115-hour cap is a very confusing situation for people to understand. And I think the intent, and I spoke to Chris Knox in July of 21. He said he put that in. That was all him. And he said the reason he put it in was because he wanted to avoid senior pilots from taking all the overtime. Whatever words he used. That was the intent of putting that in there. Now, a part of the mechanics of how this contract came to be written is that the award that the arbitrator issued on September 9th of 21 was the basis in which the contract was crafted or put into words. So there was not, we did not present to them a contract, the arbitrator a contract, and then he went ahead and ruled on it. It was all of the terms and conditions of making the contract. And so I think what happened was that it wasn't written clearly, which is very typical in our contract terms, as everybody knows. And the way it ended up getting written was that there was only a 115-hour cap placed on the amount of overtime that you could get. So, for example, if you were working at the last 2 weeks of the month and your pattern was going to credit you 80 hours, then during your first 2 weeks, if you wanted to, you could place yourself on VX or bid VX trips, and you could get up to 115 hours. And once you reached 115 hours, you would then have to subordinate your seniority. Well, we were given this proposal that we needed to raise the cap to 130. And I believe that everybody believed that they were raising it from 115 hours of overtime to 130 hours of overtime. But that's not what they were doing. What they were saying was when they went into the contract, when they opened it up and they modified it, they inserted language that said that the 130 hours now needs to include the projected flying. So going back to the scenario of you working the last 2 weeks of the month, if you were going to credit 80 hours and a trip came up that paid you 50 and your seniority would hold it, it would be awarded to you. And when you came back from that trip and you wanted to bid another trip, then you would be declined from getting that trip because you already had the 130 hours, including your projected flying for the month. And if anyone below you was also bidding for it, or it was in the same situation that you were, and they went all the way down the line, it would have to then that's when it would be able to come up to you. So there needs to be awareness of what the language actually says. And I could understand the confusion because our contract is filled with ambiguous terms. And that is a portion for another podcast at another time to be able to get to where we need to create a contract language that does not require so much interpretation. And usually that interpretation ends up working against us. So I look forward to being able to talk to you again. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody fly safe.